What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We are back with another Ferrari 412 build video for you guys. If you guys watched part 1 and 2 of our rear suspension, you'll know that we built an entire custom rear suspension system for the 412. Today, we're going to be going ahead and installing it on the car and test fitting everything to see how it fits. So before we can test the rear suspension, I want to show you guys the shocks that we bought for this car. Early on in the process of building the rear suspension, we decided that we wanted to use Penske Racing shocks. They are top of the line, best of the best. We have experience using them before on other Ferrari projects, which means we have some of the design already in there.
Because if it's a regular, normal, linear shock, the line would go like that.
So we had this shock, custom valve. It is a digressive piston, but we wanted it to be, more for a street car than a race car. So it is going to blow off a little easier than a digressive system would in a full-blown race car, which is nice. That should give us nice feel over bumps, while also keeping the car stiff. After some test fitting, Martin set about mounting the reservoirs using a riv nut system with these straps to hold on the reservoir systems. So Martin got the rear wheel well situated and ready for the installation of the rear suspension. We are going to be making use of these original suspension forks. These are what mount to the rear suspension arms. We've got the rear shock on this side fully installed, as well as the reservoir is installed right there. Ready to install the arms and the upright. So of course we've got the rear suspension upright right here, and Steve is currently working on installing the suspension bushings onto the rear suspension arms. We've got a number of hardware here, as well as these suspension bushings. These are factory Ferrari suspension bushings that we're using. Feels good. You guys can see the inner bushings are now on the lower arm. They fit real nice. Everything looks good. Is the lower arm on those forks like I talked about. Seems to fit good. Brand new bushings are tight as they should be. Just gotta get them all lined up. So now that we've got both of the upper and lower arms on, gotta install the upright. One side. Martin will get the bolts.
I think these, just like the other thing, I don't think we actually need to put the nuts on.
Yeah.
So that is the upright and both arms on. And now we just gotta tie it to the shock. Went ahead and put on the wheel. You guys can see that's fit on there now. And Martin is just adjusting some stuff to change the geometry of the suspension. So one of the cool things about this Ferrari setup is it basically has a shim setup in between the fork and the frame. And this will allow you to change, the rear camber and different things like that using these shims. One of the really important things that Steve, wanted you guys to see, oh my gosh, typical. So one of the really important things that Steve wanted you guys to see is the difference in angle from the new rear suspension compared to the old. You can see that at almost the same droop, that this arm is much flatter, which is a much better setup for, a high performance rear suspension. We're really happy with that so far. So after testing the rear suspension, we noticed two small but correctable issues in the rear suspension. Is that when we articulated it, there was two small places where there was collisions. Number one, the spring would collide with the frame in one section. We had a feeling this would happen, but we hoped we wouldn't have to modify it. After testing, we did realize that at full articulation that we would need to modify the frame just a little bit. So I'll show you guys Martin's modification now. And then also we noticed at certain places in its movement, the shock would hit the upright. The problem being that when we were designing the rear upright, we were using a shock design with a different adjustment. And the new adjustment ring on the bottom eyelet would collide with the rear upright. So what we actually did, which would also allow us to kill two birds with one stone, is get an extended bottom eyelet. This would also move the downward droop of the suspension down, which is something we wanted to do anyways. So with both of those things figured out now, we're gonna go ahead and reinstall the rear suspension. We've got the full rear suspension installed now. We put it on the ground and took a look at it. The ride height is not exactly where we want it. The idea is to have this arm completely parallel to the ground at stock ride height. You guys can see the absolute massive difference in this suspension versus the original suspension on this side, which Martin is now currently working on taking off the car.
All right, so it fits. I really like it. I'm very happy with the way it moved. Martin and I are both excited, so we've gone ahead and pretty much finalized what we're making for the front, and I'm gonna go ahead and move on to machining all the parts for the front now.